I want to go to this stuff about the strange attractor at the end of history.
Right.
I never ever, considered that notion that we are being pulled as opposed to simply just going on forever and ever. And that's for sure something that people are going to go, huh?
Well, in the 19th century, if you spoke of nature having a purpose, you were thought to be anti-evolution, because in the 19th century there was great pain to eliminate anything like preformation or teleology or purpose or God, all these things that they were trying to eliminate from evolutionary theory. And until very recently in scientific thought, the idea has been that events are pushed by the causal necessity embedded in the events which preceded them. In other words, if you ask the question, what is the most important event in terms of, or moment in terms of shaping this moment, the answer would be the moment just before this moment, because it hands on the energy, the space, the time. Recently, mathematicians have evolved what they call the notion of attractors, or strange attractors in some cases. And these are processes where a dynamic is not pushed by causal necessity from behind, but it's pulled by a point in the future. You could almost say, for example, if you release a ball bearing up near the rim of a bowl, that its attractor is the bottom of the bowl. And the ball bearing will roll down to the bottom, then halfway up the side, then up the side in shorter and shorter cycles until it finally comes to rest in the exact bottom of the bowl. Well, from the point of view of the new mathematics, the bottom of the bowl is a basin of attraction, and the ball bearing has fallen under its influence. So I have always doubted that evolutionary theory without purpose, without teleology, could produce as complex a world as we see around us in as short a time, 5 billion years, as the life of the Earth. It seemed more as though these processes were not just wandering across a flat genetic landscape. They were the process of biological evolution was actually being channeled between high walls. In other words, it could move. It had some motion this way, some this, but its forward direction was inevitable. And this is the idea of an attractor, that what the universe is doing is it is under the sway of what I call the transcendental object at the end of time. And that is this domain of hyper-connectivity, that it would be perfect novelty. And all nature aspires for this state of perfect novelty. You could almost say that nature abhors habit, and so it seeks the novel by producing various kinds of phenomena at every level in biology, chemistry, and society. And so there really is a purpose to the universe. Its purpose is this state of hyper-complexification in which all of its points become related to each other, become what mathematicians call cotangent. And it gives the universe the feeling of being imbued with a caring presence. It makes it appear as though nature is tending toward something, and that it changes our own ethical and moral position in the universe. Because, science tells us that we're the products of a cosmic accident. We're at the edge of an ordinary galaxy in an ordinary star system, and we're damn lucky to be here. And that's it. That's our place, a very existential notion of our place in the cosmos. But if you take this other point of view, that process is under the influence of an attractor, and that the value the attractor is maximizing is novelty, then suddenly, for the first time in 500 years, human beings are moved back to the center of the stage because we are the most novel thing on this planet. We are everything biology is, plus technology, language, politics, philosophy, art, so forth and so on. So suddenly human beings become important, not mere cosmic witnesses to a meaningless cosmos, but the cutting edge of a cosmos that glories in order and is moving toward higher states of order. And at the present moment, we are the carriers. Once it was the volcanic processes that shaped this planet. Once it was the life of the early oceans. Once it was the great dinosaurs. But today, humanity represents the cutting edge of complexity and this process of moving toward complexification. So it, without invoking God or any sort of myth, you give meaning to human life. What is man's purpose? To advance and preserve novelty. You know, this is an ethical position. It means you don't replace rainforests with pastures. You don't censor books. You don't lean on people who make gender choices different from yours. No, the purpose of being a human is to complexify reality even more, to hand on a more diverse, more complicated, more multifaceted universe to our children. And when this process of complexification reaches the omega point, it will fulfill, I believe, the expectations of all of these religions, but it will fulfill it in a mature, scientific, and universal way that these religions all lack, because they all reflect their parochial origins.
It's certainly true.
It's certainly true that we see a limited slice of reality. And your example from Flatland, yes, anything which moves as a gradient through time, we will not discern very carefully. I mean, for instance, this is why we have the science of economics, because it keeps track of the behavior of markets, which is something you can't see or feel, but which has become very important to human institutions. It's a fourth-dimensional factor that we need to coordinate into our planning. So we've created an entire science to study the movement and behavior of markets. One of the things, I'm always trying to visualize what the concrescence would be like, even though I know that in principle it's probably not possible to imagine it. But several factors are on the horizon which I think can be brought together to sort of get a picture of what we're headed toward. One is, for some time now, we've been involved in building complex prostheses, which we call machines and computers. They are part of us. We don't perceive them as part of us because we identify with the flesh and exteriorize the fabricated metal. But in fact, they are a part of us as much as our political systems, our agriculture production systems, so forth and so on. So the animal body has reached the limits of its evolutionary abilities. A cheetah can run 75 miles an hour, an elephant can lift 3 tons, and so forth and so on. To go beyond those capacities of the animal body, you have to make a marriage with mechanical things. So we are extending ourselves through the machines. Well, one of the things that these machines do is they're time compressors. You and I sitting here talking are operating at about 100 hertz. If we could be magically downloaded into a top-of-the-line computer, we would run at 800 megahertz. That means we could do 800 million more things in this moment than we can do when we're wearing flesh. So it may be that we will find a way to technologically stretch time And this will become for us like a false eternity. You may have only 10 minutes left in your life, but it may be time enough to pack in all of human history from the fall of Rome to the present moment. So we are finding ways out of the three-dimensional Newtonian prison, which says, you know, life is narrow and confined and ends at the grave. And we're doing it by becoming information that is freed from material. And somehow this allows us to make this ascent to the next dimensional modality. Information is not time and space constrained the way we are. We talk about the difficulty of moving an object at the speed of light. Our entire planetary technology cannot achieve moving a marble at the speed of light. But we can move information at the speed of light. Tetrabytes of it. We do this every day. So we see, we stand then like children at the edge of the ocean of information, and we're putting our feet in and wondering, you know, could we swim in that? What would it be like to be wet in that? What would it be like to go into that new medium? A similar dilemma must have confronted the early amphibians as they stared at the land and said, you know, could we leave the ocean? Could we go up into those places? Could we breathe air and actually make the transition to such a hostile and alienating environment as the land? And so these are major symmetry breaks. But in every case, the answer has been, you bet, and sooner or later somebody did it, and then all succeeding generations have followed suit. What is fascinating about this particular transition is that we are conscious of the implications. We who will make the transition will in some sense, some limited sense, understand its implications, where I don't think that was true for the animals that left the primordial ocean. They simply were behaving blind instinct and evolutionarily dictated behaviors. But the degrees of freedom accessible to us are so multifarious that we can actually appreciate for the first time our circumstance, and our circumstance is awe-inspiring. I mean, we are about to take the step out of matter. The planet is on a collision course with the most profound event it's possible to imagine, the freeing of organic life from the chrysalis of matter. For 1 billion years there's been life on this planet, but never life that could step outside of matter. But this is obviously what's in the cards, and we are privileged to be central to that event.